January 2nd, 2005, North Korea. The temperature is 20 degrees below zero. The mountain wind screams through the jagged peaks of Kicheon, but the man crouching in the shadows doesn't feel the cold. He only feels the smell, the sickening, sweet stench of burning human flesh. In front of him lies a high-voltage fence. High-intensity electricity hums through the wires with a mechanical buzz that sounds like a death sentence. To touch it is to be erased. To stay behind it is to be slowly consumed by a system that has owned him since the second he was born. His name is Shin Dong-hyuk. He's 23 years old, and he has never spent a single second of his life as a free man. Most people dream of freedom, but Shin? He didn't even know the word existed. In Camp 14, a total control zone, there is no concept of outside. There is no world. There is only the fence, the coal mines, and the guards who are treated like gods. He is not alone. Beside him is Park, a man who told him stories of a land where people eat grilled meat instead of rats. Park goes first. He lunges for the gap between the wires. Park doesn't make it. The current grabs him, locking his muscles in a permanent, agonizing grip. The smell of burning skin fills the air again. Park is dead in seconds, his body slumped against the bottom wire, smoking in the moonlight. This is the moment. The open loop that defines the rest of human history for this camp. Shin has two choices: turn back to the coal mines and wait for the guards to execute him for treason, or use his friend's cooling corpse as a bridge. He chooses the bridge. As he crawls over Park's back, the wires singe his legs, the skin on his shins peeling away like paper. But he doesn't stop. He drops into the snow on the other side. For the first time in 23 years, the fence is behind him. But he has no map. He has no shoes. He has no idea where China is. He only knows one thing. The world he thought was a prison might be much, much bigger than he ever imagined. In the world you and I know, a child is a blessing, a symbol of hope. But in the distorted reality of Camp 14, a child is a biological byproduct of a work quota. Shin Dong-hyuk's existence began not with a romance, but with a transaction. It's called Pyo-sang Kyol-hon, a reward marriage. In this hellscape, the guards act as gods, and like gods, they grant favors. If a male prisoner and a female prisoner exceed their labor targets, if they work until their hands bleed and their backs break without complaint, the guards might reward them. The reward isn't money. It isn't extra rest. It is each other. The guards pick a man and a woman, and for 5 nights they are allowed to sleep together. No courtship, no choice, just a state-mandated union designed to produce the next generation of slave labor. Shin was born in 1982 from one of these unions. But don't mistake this for a family. In Camp 14, the word family has been scrubbed of its meaning. To Shin, his mother wasn't a source of comfort. She was a competitor for survival. In their small concrete cell, there were no bedtime stories. There were no hugs. There was only the thin, watery corn gruel. Every calorie was a battlefield. Shin recalls stealing his mother's lunch when she wasn't looking. He felt no guilt. How could he? Guilt is a luxury for the fed. In his mind, she was just another body in a uniform, another person whose survival might mean his starvation. He was taught from the moment he could speak that he was born a criminal. He was told that the blood in his veins was tainted by the sins of his father and grandfather. But what were those sins? Shin didn't know. He didn't care. He only knew that to atone for those unknown crimes, he had to follow the 10 laws of the camp. And the first law he learned was the most terrifying of all. Do not escape, or you will be shot. But the second law was the one that truly broke his soul. Every prisoner must watch and report on each other, especially their own family. At age 6, while children in the West are learning their ABCs, Shin Dong-hyuk was learning how to watch people die. School in Camp 14 isn't about literature or math. It's a laboratory for broken spirits. The teachers? They aren't educators. They are guards in uniforms, carrying wooden pointers and sidearms. They don't teach you to think. They teach you to obey. On the walls of every classroom, the 10 laws of Camp 14 are etched in cold black ink. These weren't just rules. They were the boundaries of existence. Law number 1. Do not escape. If you try, or if you even know someone is planning to try, and you don't report it, you are executed immediately. Law number 3. Be thorough in your surveillance. This is the rule that poisons the soul. In the camp, snitching isn't a sin. It's the highest virtue. Shin was taught that if he heard a classmate whisper a complaint or saw a friend tuck a stray piece of coal into their pocket, he had a holy duty to report them. The guards were to be viewed as supreme masters. If a guard walked by, you bowed. If a guard spoke, you looked at the dirt. To look a guard in the eye was an act of rebellion. To question a guard was a death sentence. But the most effective tool of the camp wasn't the bullet. It was the cleansing of the blood. Shin was told every day, "You are a criminal because of your parents. Your only hope of survival is to work until your body fails, to scrub the sin out of your veins through hard labor." The fear was so absolute that it destroyed basic human empathy. Shin remembers a girl in his class, just a child, who was beaten to death by a teacher because she had 5 kernels of corn in her pocket. Shin didn't feel pity for her. He didn't feel angry at the teacher. He thought she was a thief. He thought she deserved to die because she broke the law. That is the true power of Camp 14. It doesn't just cage your body. It makes you the warden of your own mind. But soon, the laws Shin lived by would be put to the ultimate test. A test that involved his own mother. April 1996. Shin is 14 years old. He is starving, a permanent state of being in Camp 14. He returns to the small, cold shack he shares with his mother. He expects silence. Instead, he hears whispering. He listens through the thin wall. His mother and his older brother, Shin Hae-gun, are talking about something forbidden. Something that could get 3 generations killed. They are talking about outside. In a normal world, a son would feel hope. He might join them. He might protect them. But Shin Dong-hyuk was not raised in a normal world. He was a product of the 10 laws. And law number 1 was screaming in his brain. Any witness to an escape attempt who fails to report it will be shot. He didn't see a mother and a brother. He saw 2 people who were going to get him killed. He saw 2 criminals who were stealing his safety. And then a darker thought emerged. a thought born of a stomach that had never been full. If I tell the guards, will they give me more rice? Shin didn't hesitate. He ran to the school. He found his teacher, a guard he trusted, and he traded the lives of his family for a promised extra ration of food. But the gods of the camp are not merciful. They are predators. Instead of a reward, Shin was arrested. The teacher took all the credit for uncovering the plot and left Shin to the interrogators. They thought Shin was part of the plan. They took him to an underground cell, a place where the walls were stained with the history of 1,000 screams. They stripped him naked. They tied his ankles. And then they swung a large steel hook through his skin, hanging him from the ceiling over a charcoal fire. As the fire scorched his back, creating the massive scars he still carries today, Shin didn't pray for his mother. He didn't regret his betrayal. He sat there, suspended in agony, hating her. He blamed her for the fire. He blamed her for the pain. He was 14. He was a monster. But he was a monster the camp had spent 14 years perfecting. 7 months later, the burns on Shin's back have turned into thick, jagged scars. He is released from the underground prison and taken to a place every prisoner knows too well, the execution ground. In Camp 14, executions are not private affairs. They are mandatory viewing. Thousands of prisoners are gathered in a silent, shivering mass. Shin is forced to stand in the very front row. He looks at the gallows. He looks at the firing squad. And then he sees them. His mother and his brother are led out. They are barely recognizable. Their skin is sallow, their bodies broken by the same torture Shin had just endured. His mother looks at the crowd, her eyes searching. She finds Shin. In any other story, this is where the son screams. This is where he cries out for mercy. But as Shin looked at the woman who gave him life, he felt a surge of something terrifying. Pure, unadulterated rage. He didn't hate the guards. He didn't hate the regime. He hated her. In his mind, she was a thief who had tried to steal his life by planning an escape. She had broken the laws. She had caused his torture. The guards forced his mother onto a wooden crate. They tied a noose around her neck. She didn't say a word. She just kept looking at him. They kicked the crate away. Shin watched her struggle. He watched the life leave her eyes. He felt nothing but relief. He thought, because of you, I am safe now. Then came his brother. They didn't use a rope for him. They used bullets. 3 shots echoed through the valley, shattering the silence of the mountains. Shin watched his brother's body crumple into the dirt. Again, no tears, only the cold, mechanical thought of a survivor. The traitors are gone. The blood is cleansed. This is the true horror of the North Korean gulag. It doesn't just kill the body. It deletes the soul. It turns a son into a witness for the state and a mother into a target. Shin returned to his work in the mines that afternoon. He believed the world was exactly as it should be. He believed he would die inside these fences, a loyal slave to the end. But a year later, a new prisoner would arrive. A man who carried a weapon more powerful than any gun. A story about a meal. For years after his mother's execution, Shin Dong-hyuk was a ghost. He worked, he ate, he slept. He was the perfect prisoner because he had no soul left to rebel. But in 2004, the machinery of the camp brought him a new cellmate, a man named Park. Park was different. He wasn't born in the camp. He was an outsider, a former high-ranking official who had traveled to China and even East Germany before falling out of favor with the regime. At first, Shin viewed Park as a target. He waited for Park to say something treasonous so he could report him and get more rice. But Park didn't talk about politics. He didn't talk about the great leader. He talked about chicken. Park described things Shin couldn't even visualize. He spoke of broiled chicken, sweet and sour pork, and beef grilled over charcoal. He described the way the fat would melt on your tongue, the way the spices would tingle in your throat. To you, this sounds like a menu. To Shin, it was a religious revelation. In Camp 14, freedom was a word with no meaning. It was an abstract ghost. But chicken? Chicken was real. Chicken was a reason to live. Park told him that in the world outside the fence, people didn't just eat to survive. They ate for pleasure. He told him about cities that were lit up at night, about people who wore clothes that weren't gray uniforms, and about a place called the South, where everyone was free. The indoctrination started to crack. For the first time in 22 years, Shin began to ask a question that the 10 laws had forbidden. Why am I here? He looked at his scarred shins.
He looked at the coal dust under his fingernails, and then he looked at the high-voltage fence. For the first time, it didn't look like a protector. It looked like a wall standing between him and a plate of grilled meat. Park had planted a seed, but in Camp 14, seeds of hope usually lead to a harvest of corpses. If they were going to find that world of light and food, they would have to do something no one born in the camp had ever successfully done. They would have to climb over the lightning. January 2nd, 2005. The night is a shroud of white and black. Shin and Park are assigned to a maintenance detail near the outer perimeter, high in the mountains. This is their only chance. The guards are out of sight, huddling against the freezing wind. They reach the fence. It stands 10 feet tall. Jagged barbs crown the top, but the real killer is invisible. The current humming through the wires is enough to stop a heart in a microsecond. "I'll go first," Park whispers. His breath hitches in the air. He doesn't look back. He lunges for the gap between the lowest wires. In an instant, the world turns into a nightmare. Park doesn't scream. You can't scream when 3,000 volts lock your jaw and melt your nerves. He hits the wires and stays there, stuck like an insect in a web. The smell returns. The same smell from Shin's torture years ago. Burning hair, searing flesh. Shin stands frozen. His only friend, his only map to the world of grilled chicken, is dying right in front of him. Park's body becomes a conductor, a smoking shield. The logic of the camp takes over. Shin doesn't mourn. He doesn't panic. He sees a bridge. He grabs Park's coat. He feels the vibration of the electricity humming through his friend's corpse. Using Park's back as a literal stepping stone, Shin climbs. He thrusts his body through the gap, but he's too small. His legs slip. The wire bites into his shins. The electricity arcs through his skin, burning through his pants, through his muscle, down to the bone. He screams, a silent internal scream, and flings himself forward with the strength of a man who refuses to die a slave. He hits the snow, hard. He rolls, gasping, waiting for the searchlights, waiting for the dogs, waiting for the bullet in the back of his head. Silence. He looks back. Park is still there, a dark silhouette against the glowing wires, unmoving. Shin is on the other side. For the first time in his life, there is no fence between him and the horizon. But he is bleeding. He has no shoes, and the nearest border is hundreds of miles of frozen, hostile territory away. Imagine waking up on another planet.
No. Imagine waking up in a world where everything you were told was a lie. Shin Dong-hyuk is now outside the fence, but he is a man with no identity, no money, and no understanding of how the world works. He doesn't know what a country is. He doesn't know what money is. He only knows that the sun rises in the east and that he must keep moving north. For the first few days, he wanders through the frozen mountains of North Korea. He finds an abandoned military uniform in a shed, his first disguise. He steals fermented bean paste and salt from farmers' huts to stay alive. He is a predator in a land of prey. Then, he reaches the Tumen River. He crosses into China. And this is where the true culture shock begins. For 23 years, Shin believed the entire world was a gray, starving prison. Now, he sees lights. Not the flickering torches of a guard tower, but the neon glow of Chinese border towns. He sees people laughing. He sees shops overflowing with the very meat Park had died describing. But China is not a sanctuary. It is a trap. The Chinese police are hunting for defectors. If caught, Shin will be sent back to Camp 14. And he knows exactly what happens to those who return. They are not just executed. They are made an example of. Slowly. Shin spends 2 years in the shadows of China. He works as a farmhand for pennies. He learns to speak enough Mandarin to survive. He travels by foot and by bus thousands of miles, guided only by the vague hope of reaching the south. He travels through the Gobi Desert. He faces hunger that rivals the camp, but this time, the hunger is different. It's a hunger fueled by the memory of the fence. He eventually finds his way to the South Korean consulate in Shanghai. He walks up to the gates, a man who looks like a beggar, but carries the secrets of a hidden Holocaust in his mind. He tells them who he is. He tells them where he came from. And for the first time in his life, someone doesn't look at him as a criminal. They look at him as a miracle. But freedom, as Shin would soon discover, carries a weight that his broken body wasn't prepared to hold. For 23 years, Shin Dong-hyuk's world was a gray circle of coal dust and barbed wire. When he finally arrived in Seoul, South Korea, that world exploded into a billion colors. But freedom isn't a fairy tale. For a man born in a gulag, freedom is a psychological assault. In Seoul, Shin was terrified. He didn't know how to use a doorknob. He had never seen a television. He walked into a supermarket and stood frozen for 30 minutes, staring at the rows of bread. In Camp 14, people died for a handful of corn. Here, there was more food in one aisle than he had seen in his entire life. Instead of joy, he felt a crushing, suffocating guilt. Every time he ate a meal, he saw Park. He saw the flash of electricity on the fence. He remembered that he was only alive because he had used his friend's corpse as a bridge. He remembered that his mother and brother were dead because he had pulled the trigger of the system. The South Korean doctors and psychologists tried to help, but how do you fix a mind that was designed to be a slave? Shin struggled to trust anyone. In the camp, trust was a death sentence. He kept looking over his shoulder, expecting a guard to strike him for standing too tall or looking someone in the eye. He was free from the fence, but the fence was still inside him. For years, Shin lived in a state of survivor's guilt so intense it nearly broke him. He felt like a monster pretending to be a man. He didn't want to tell his story. He wanted to disappear. He wanted to forget the smell of burning skin and the sound of the 3 shots that killed his brother. But then he realized something.
The guards in Camp 14 wanted him to be silent. They wanted the world to believe that people like him didn't exist, that his mother's death didn't matter. His silence was their final victory. So, he made a choice. He wouldn't just be a survivor. He would be a witness. He would turn his scars into a map for the rest of the world to follow. Today, An Young-chol, now known to the world as Shin Dong-hyuk, no longer hides his scars. He doesn't look at his shins with shame. He looks at them as a map of where he's been and a reminder of where 200,000 people still remain. He didn't just escape a prison. He escaped an ideology. He founded NK Watch, an organization dedicated to documenting the very atrocities he once committed and witnessed. He has stood before the United Nations, a man born in a cage, telling the world's most powerful leaders that the hell they read about in history books is still happening right now. But perhaps the most remarkable part of his legacy is who he works with. Shin often sits at the same table as former prison guards, men who once wore the uniform he feared most. Together, they piece together the truth. Because they understand something the rest of the world doesn't. In North Korea, everyone is a prisoner. Some are just allowed to hold the keys. Shin's story is a testament to the fact that no matter how deep the indoctrination, the human spirit has a North Star that always points toward freedom.
He thought the world was a prison, only to find out that the world is a place where one voice can change everything. But the fence is still there. The electricity is still humming. And somewhere inside Camp 14, another child is being told that they are born a criminal. If you believe that stories like Shin's need to be heard, if you believe that silence is the greatest ally of oppression, hit that subscribe button. By staying informed, you are helping to keep the light on the places they want to keep dark. And we want to hear from you. After hearing Shin's journey, what part of his story shocked you the most? Is it the betrayal? Or the fact that he used his friend as a bridge? Leave a comment below. Let's keep this conversation alive until the fences finally come down. Shin Dong-hyuk escaped the deadliest prison on Earth, but he won't be truly free until everyone else is too.